Yo, what's going on, guys? And we got to talk about the Hornets right here. Chris Quinn and Lamar Skeeter are two guys that we're hearing that are people who are gaining traction for the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets, as you guys know, are two guys that I personally like. I think the Charlotte Hornets are a team that they need just development. They need a good coaching, infrastructure to be brought in there. And our man, we know the Hornets a few days ago, we did that David Adelman, Charles Lee, Jordi Fernandez, and Kevin Young are being interviewed. I still do believe Charles Lee because Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin, and then Peterson, the new president. The whole organization is basically Hawks, former Hawks people, from specifically from the Mike Budenholzer era, and Charles Lee was an assistant. So again, guys, until we get some actual concrete news, I'm going to pump that drum or beat that drum that I really do believe it's going to be Charles Lee going here. But we're hearing that Chris Quinn and Lamar Skeeter. Lamar Skeeter's been with the Utah Jazz player development coach under Quinn Snyder, and Quinn Snyder was a guy who was a Mike Budenholzer guy, and he's went from player development to being one of the lead assistants, while Chris Quinn, former NBA player for the Miami Heat, played for the New Jersey Nets, San Antonio Spurs, and Cleveland Cavaliers. He was with Northwestern at first, then he's been with the Heat for several years now. Really good player development guy. Specifically, what we're hearing with the Hornets is they're expected to consider Lamar Skeeter and Chris Quinn. Now, when I see that with the Hornets, I think the Hornets, obviously, them moving on from Steve Clifford was just them understanding that they needed I think he was done with it, and also giving him a front office role. I think they just look at it ever since that Kenny Atkinson moved on from the franchise, or dipped, where I personally knew Steve Clifford had a 2-year deal with the third year being a team option. I personally never thought I thought, if you guys follow football, the Houston Texans, before they got DeMeco Ryans, they got this guy called David Culley from the Ravens, who was like, for most people, they had never heard of him. And I knew they were a placeholder. And then they put Lovie Smith the following year. They just had a placeholder. And I felt like the Charlotte Hornets were doing the same thing the Houston Texans did. And Jeff Peterson supposedly, and the rest of the new ownership, was cool picking up that option of Steve Clifford. I don't believe it. But allegedly, through the weeks, they want to transition now, the Hornets, to have Clifford remain with the organization in an advisory role. And Peterson, who's working with the Nets, he wants to be able to find a coach that aligns with them. And obviously, Peterson's former Nets will conduct a search as well, as they fired Jacques Vaughn. So I wonder if Jacques Vaughn's going to be put in that. I doubt it. But Charlotte's already received permission, as we mentioned, to interview several people, and experienced veterans like Mike Budenholzer and James Borrego have San Antonio connections, which Sean Marks, Peterson's old co-worker, has connections in as well. Quinn Snyder, Hawks guy, was a San Antonio Spurs disciple. And for me, I think when we look, there's a growing sense that teams around, like the Hornets, as well as Brooklyn, the Wizards, are considering, younger first-time head coaches, in additional to, experienced people. And with us, Chris Quinn, Lamar Skeeter are two people. I personally believe Lee, who was on the Mike Budenholzer staff, and when Schnall was a member of the Hawks ownership group and Peterson served in the front office, is going to be the coach. I will continue to beat that drum. There's also a rumor that Sean Sweeney met with the Hornets as well, and he's a rising name. So those are people to go. I do believe that Lee was a finalist for the Pistons job that would go to Monty Williams, and his status as a former player, ability to connect with the roster, went to Bucknell. He's going to be the coach, but I think there's a lot to take there. I want to hear your thoughts on that one, but let's move on to the next one.